Dan, know you had a rough time at school. Tell me about it.
Yeah, no worries. So while I was at school, I found that I suppose there wasn't really any opportunities to learn about business or anything while I was in school. I did notice that I'm from an area called Frankston, and one of the issues I had was, every week at least, I was always in after-school detention with the same people, always in after-school detention. And the system didn't work for me. I didn't fit into that idea of this perfect system where, they would want me to sit down in school for 6-7 hours a day and learn from things written on a whiteboard.
So what do you think about subjects like algebra, for example?
Obviously that was something that you need to learn while you're in school, and that was something that I had no interest in learning in the slightest. I couldn't understand how it was going to help me while I was in school. There was many topics that I couldn't understand how it was going to help me in life. And I think that's the same thing with a lot of students and a lot of my friends that also went to the same school. They couldn't understand how that was going to benefit them, and if you can't understand why it's going to benefit you in life, generally you don't really want to learn it. But it's sort of forced upon you, and if you don't stick to that curriculum, it's almost like there's something wrong with you.
So you used to get suspensions, is that right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I would get suspended quite often, actually. My favourite ones were out-of-school suspensions. They were a bit more serious if they had to be out of school, but they were definitely my favourite because it meant, at the time, I was able to play my Xbox and all my games and hang out with my friends as well. And then they realised how much I enjoyed the out-of-school suspensions, so they started giving me the inter-school suspensions as well, which obviously they were much tougher on me because then I had to get forced to do work alone in a room. And then I would tend to, as I said, school didn't really work for me. And in lower demographic areas like that, you tend to find that it's a bit rougher, especially at the schools. So I would tend to get into a lot of like the punch-ons. Until one day, one of the punch-ons that I got into obviously got me expelled from the school I was at. So. But again, I didn't fit into that system, and I think there's a lot of people exactly like me that don't fit into that system, and we don't get taught enough about.
So you were a total failure at school. You were like the dregs, the failure. Yeah. And then what happened? You go to work for McDonald's.
Well, that's it. So I was never meant to do anything. Like while you're in school, it's are you going to be a lawyer or are you going to be a doctor? There's no are you going to run and operate your own business?
Did they ever talk about that at all?
No, not at all.
Not once.
They don't talk about running your own business in school.
What about being a tradie?
Being a tradie is almost looked down upon a little bit. So if you want to be a tradie, most people would go and do VCAL to be a tradie, and obviously VCAL is quite looked down on. Within the school system, and even the classes that you go to.
So is that the impression you got from the teachers, that it was really a lower grade of...
Yeah, you don't want to be a tradie, and there was no idea about even being a business owner. That wasn't taught at all. It was, do you want to be a lawyer or do you want to be a doctor? And if you don't fit into that category, well, you're not good enough for us. So, and as I said, a lot of my friends had that exact same issue, and a lot of my friends, ended up doing drugs, and working their way up to much harder drugs. Some of them went to jail. One of them even got deported because of how serious it was, and some of them even committed suicide. And that was the sort of, because we didn't fit into that system, that we were always going to be the outcast. We were always going to be that 1% of people that were rebellious. And
so you were total failure, written off by the system.
Yeah. And
then you decided to buy a franchise, which was a big decision at the time.
It certainly was. So I was at McDonald's, and McDonald's was the only job I could get at the time. Worked there for a bit, learned a little bit about, obviously a little bit more about business from being at McDonald's. I believe McDonald's taught me much more than school ever did. And then I seen the Jim's mowing opportunity, and went with it, and for obvious reasons. And once I joined up with Jim's, I seen the opportunity that was available. Which was, infinite. I mean, I could mow as many lawns as I possibly wanted, and every time I was going to mow another lawn, I was going to make more money. So I think that's where it really just...
You became one of our best franchisees. You employed 6 people and turned over... What was your maximum turnover?
So I was making on average about $24,000 a week when I was a franchisee. So as running my franchise...
That's $24,000 a week?
Yes.
When in a lot of jobs you get like $48,000 a year.
That's correct, yeah. So at Macca's I was getting roughly about $50,000 a year. Yep. So many jobs you'd get $50,000 a year, and that was management level as well there. where I was, in Jim's mowing within 3.5 years making $24,000 a week. So obviously I was earning quite a good income. Yeah. So and obviously it's just continued increasing because there's more and more opportunities that come about.
Since then, you've become one of our most successful franchisors. You're looking after how many? 100?
About 130 at the moment. Yeah.
You're mentoring 130 franchisees.
Yeah.
And teaching them, and a lot of those are doing extremely well too. I know some of them are just getting fantastic income even in their first year.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely are. So I actually have a challenge for them. So I made over $300,000 in my first 12 months as a Jim's Mowing franchisee. So the challenge I set is, can you beat my $300,000 in 12 months? And many of them are, because they have something to work towards. And I push them and I coach them towards that. And probably get a little bit of banter involved with it as well. But they tend to love it because they've got that opportunity in front of them. And
the interviews you've done are being seen by tens of thousands of people. Just an example.
Yeah, they certainly have. Yeah, I think it shows. It doesn't matter what beginnings you come from. I mean, if the opportunity is there.
It just makes you wonder how many kids there are failing in school who have the same amazing potential as you, if only they were given the right chance.
It's a bit worrying, honestly. It's a bit worrying because if it's anything, I was, that one exception that I wasn't the one that went on drugs. I wasn't the one that went to jail. I wasn't the one that committed suicide out of the kids that were like me. How many of them are like that at the moment, which is quite worrying because while you're in school, everything's all right, but it's once you're outside of school, you've got no one there to look after you, no one to take care of you. You haven't learnt enough because you've been put into this system where they're not teaching you the things that you really need to learn.
They only have one track in mind.
That's exactly it. And then after that, you've forgotten about.